Welcome back to another in our series of the parables of Jesus. Our parable today comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21. We'll be reading verses 33 through 46. The parable of the landowner and the tenants. Here another parable. There was a master of a house who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it, and dug a winepress in it, and built a tower and leased it to tenants, and went into another country. When the season for fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to get his fruit. And the tenants took his servants and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did the same to them. Finally he sent his son to them, saying, "They will respect my son." But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and have his inheritance." And they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do with those tenants? They said to him, "He will put those wretches to a miserable death and let out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the fruits in their seasons." Jesus said to them, "Have you never read in the Scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruits. And the one who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. When it falls on anyone, it will crush him." When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he was speaking about them. And although they were seeking to arrest him, they feared the crowds because they held him to be a prophet. For those of you who are fiction fans and literature, you may remember the required reading in your literature classes of George Orwell's Animal Farm. Orwell's book might be a good read in and of itself, but if you understand the meaning behind the Orwell's book and what the characters represent allegorically, it gives you a fresh and clear meaning of his message. His book represents, by scholars' estimation, the Russian Republic under Stalin, and the characters were historical individuals coming out of the Russian Revolution. John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress is another example of allegory in literature. His book mimics the Protestant movement and the symbolism contained in our everyday lives. Herman Melville's novel, Moby Dick, is an allegory of men's struggles on many levels. Aesop's Fables uses the allegory to teach morals by the use of animals and the like, representing human beings and their ways of life. Paul uses the allegory to teach about the law when he presents Sarah and Hagar in his letter to the Galatians. In Galatians chapter 4, verses 24 through 26, it reads, "Now this may be interpreted allegorically. These women are two covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. Now Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. She corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. But Jerusalem above is free, and she is our mother." Our parable today is an allegory of sorts in which Jesus presents an epic saga of God's efforts through the centuries that culminates with the killing of the son of the owner of the vineyard. The master of the vineyard is God. The vineyard is Israel. Those things he put in the vineyard may be seen as the law. The fence and the amenities he provided for their advantage and comfort is the promised land. Though no specific timeline is given, we are told that God sent his servants, the prophets, to get his fruit. The Jews in Jesus' day would no doubt recognize this as that which Isaiah also alluded to when he said in Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 2, "Let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes." The fruit God desired was found in passages like this from Isaiah 58, verses 6 through 7. "Is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and to bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see the naked, to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh? Surely they would also have recognized this allegorically from their own writings. In 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verses 15 through 16, we read, "The Lord, the God of their fathers, sent persistently to them by his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept mocking the messengers of God, despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord rose against his people, until there was no remedy." Jesus wove this parable so finely that even the Pharisees did not recognize themselves. For they answered the question posed to them when we read in verses 40 through and 41, "When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do with those tenants?" They said to him, "He will put those wretches to a miserable death and let out the vineyard to other tenants, who will give him the fruits in their seasons." But Jesus deals that fatal blow to them when he quotes the psalmist in Psalm 118, verses 22 through 23, and further indicts them by telling them in verse 43, "Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruits." Then they rightly perceived that it was they who played their parts in the parable. I wonder if we could see ourselves in a parable such as this. And I wonder if I would change my heart should I find myself on the wrong side of God's will. And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and look at another of the parables of Jesus.